Greetings, everybody. Welcome along. It's another Inspire and Be Inspired. Our weekly motivational conversations, occasional life hacks. Just before I've gone on air tonight, all of my equipment decided to pack up, so there's no introduction video, which may not necessarily be a bad thing, but I want to say thank you for being here. We are broadcasting across multiple channels on my own personal profile, on the Inspire and Be Inspired page on Facebook, and also to YouTube. Wherever you're watching, please feel free to leave a comment, leave any remarks. Both myself and my guest will see them, and when we have a break in the conversation, we will address them. I'm just checking all over my screen, making sure everything appears to be working. I believe you can hear me okay. I know my guest can hear me okay. Somebody drop me a comment, let me know everything's working. While you do that, I'm going to press this button and everything's either going to break or we're going to have our guest. Yes, it works. Mr.
It works.
Dave,
I'm here.
Mr. Dave Whittall, aka Boogie Dave. Welcome along to the channel, my friend. Thank you for being here.
It's honestly, it's a pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful.
Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome, my friend. So I'll explain how it came about that you came on. We've had a few conversations and your name has popped up from time to time. And you reached out to me when we had the chat with Mr. Justin Bond, I believe it was, and Jez Collins. You said how much you thoroughly enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
You were a part of that story. You asked if you could come along and share your tales of Birmingham from your perspective. And so what we're about to do now in our series called lovingly Brum as Fuck, we're going to hear all about Birmingham from your point of view. So I think we should begin by you introducing yourself, because I'm not immediately familiar with you. Our paths haven't crossed many times down the years, if at all. I mean, I'm sure you could put me right on that. So tell us who you are, where you're from, what you've had.
Okay. No, you're completely right. Our paths have not crossed, and I think that's a reflection on Birmingham and the diversity of what's gone on in Birmingham. There's so many people. Like I hooked up literally 3 weeks ago with Sai Long, and I met with Sai. Well, I actually met with Sai's son, who wants to do some stuff with us, and
Okay.
he was like, "Can I bring my dad to this meeting?" And I'm like, "Okay." And he brought this guy along, and we were chatting away, and his dad was like, "Do you know who I am?" that famous phrase. "Do you know who I am?" And he was like, "I'm Sai Long." And I'm like, "Oh shit, you're Sai Long, okay." So I've been doing what I've been doing for almost 30 years. You've been doing what you've been doing for 30 years, and we have never, ever crossed paths. I used to go to New Tonic when we were doing Boogie Dave and Brum. I'd see Sai Long's name on flyers left, right, and center, but never in that time had we ever bumped into each other. You know,
It's crazy, isn't it?
it's a reflection on Brum. And in
Okay.
that conversation, I talked about how I used to go to the all dayers at the powerhouse when I was 16.
Okay,
And
well,
he
let me
was like,
stop you there. Let me stop you before
okay,
you get carried away.
okay.
We need an official introduction. We need to know when you were born, what part
Okay,
of
okay. Sorry, I'm
Birmingham
just getting
you're from.
excited.
Yeah, I know. We got plenty of time. No problem. Okay, so introduce yourself, the year you were born, more or less, and
Okay,
life
okay.
growing up, early
Let's just
Birmingham days.
rewind everything. So yes, I'm people know me as Boogie Dave. I was born in 1966. I child of a single mother in the 60s, growing up in Newtown. Was not the greatest, you know. It's Newtown was great, but child of a single mother was not great in the 60s. Um, Newtown was quite a strange place to grow up in. It was a very much cultural society. It was very mixed. There was all sorts of different people there. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. I went to St. George's infants, juniors, and comprehensive, which was all in a row. So everyone that went to the infant school, you were there at infant school, you were there at junior school together, and you were there at secondary school together. Um, I'm not sure whether it's anything like that these days, but back then that's how it was. So you had very strong cultural bonds with the people around you,
Hmm.
and it was a real cultural mix of people. You know, there was no kind of I don't know. I think today there's a completely different. It's not.
Segregation, if that's not a strong word.
Yeah, but I think it's segregation by choice.
Hmm.
I don't think it's imposed on people. I think it's segregation by choice
Yeah.
because people choose to be in a community of people that they recognize and that they identify with, which I
Hmm.
get, of course I get. But when I was a kid growing up, it didn't seem to be like that. It seemed to be more of let's all be multicultural. I don't know whether it was a kind of left wing thing and that's what the left wing wanted people to experience. But we were a community of all sorts of different people, and it was a
Hmm.
great time to exist. Personally, that's what I think.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
it was, yeah. I had no boundaries to the people that were around me, or everyone that was around me was of a different ilk to me. It was fantastic, you know.
Hmm.
It was Newtown was a great place to be. I really enjoyed growing up there.
I hear that. I hear that. So, some of your first memories of maybe because we're here predominantly to talk about music, so let's talk about your how the multicultural society, so to speak, and the social aspects of life in Newtown around the late 60s would have been very pub and social club orientated, I would assume.
It's kind of weird to reflect on it because I mean, like being a child of a single mother in the 60s was difficult, but my mum was very focused on introducing me to all sorts of music. So she would take me to things like she'd take me to the Sidmouth Folk Festival. So I'd be this little kid in Sidmouth at a folk festival, and then I'd come back to Newtown because the people at the Sidmouth Folk Festival were completely different to the people around me in Newtown, where I'd be at the Tuesday Club on at St George's Church and listening to reggae, and then it was a completely different. It was such a cross a variety of music. It was an amazing. Oh God, there's so many things popping up in my head right now. Thinking of my head is in a spin, my feet don't touch the ground. Do
What
you
was
know what I
her
mean?
name? Was it Kelly Marie or something like that?
Yeah, yeah,
Funny,
yeah.
funny. Okay, so we could
But
reminisce and get
so with
locked
that,
into the
you had
rom.
that whole disco side of thing going on, but also listening to folk music. And my mum would she'd be like, I remember we lived on the 14th floor of a block of flats in Martineau Tower on New John Street West. And I remember she'd be sat there with a glass of red wine, listening to classical music. But then a week later, we'd be listening to rock and roll. And then the following week, I'd be down there listening to disco at the St. George's Youth Club. Just such a variety of music at that point in time, you know?
So your the musical landscape was quite rich. Your musical tapestry was quite rich, if we want to
Absolutely, yeah.
put it in a
Yeah.
arty farty way. Okay, so let's get to the crux of it. Let's get to you, uh, 13, 14, 15, cutting your teeth on the mean streets of Newtown. So that'll take
Wow.
us to the kind of 1980s.
But the fact that the way you've just described it, like, so we have um 70, 78, 79, 80, 81. I think that period musically was so like, I was thinking about this earlier about how the different see, now you have like genres of music, like you've got house, you've got tech house, you've got minimal. Back then, you had actual musical movements. Like
Hmm.
you would have the new romantics, you'd have punk, you'd have the two-tone movement. Um, it was a different way of approaching music back then. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it was. I remember, like I was at secondary school. I think it was the second or third year, and there was the two-tone movement. I remember the complete change. We were new romantics where we would put in eyeliner on, and we were rude boys where we'd have the hats and the pencil ties. The huge difference between the different groups of people into, but you were into that specific type of music. It's different now.
It
It
is,
is
but
completely
that
different.
surprises me
But back
because I
then,
can't think of anybody. I've never come across anyone before who has said, "Well, I was a rude boy with my pencil tie and
yeah,
my
yeah,
Arrington or whatever,
yeah,
and then I was a new romantic." It was
yeah,
like, so you kind of bounced
yeah,
in between.
all of it. Because music was so important,
Hmm.
and the thing with like the new romantic movement um was the sounds because you had prior to that, you had rock music where it was all guitars and drums and bass guitars, and it was that whole analog sound. Um, Rude Boys, the two-tone movement was all that same kind of sound, and then you had this music that was electronic, and prior to that, we had never heard those sounds. And
Hmm.
so to hear these sounds, it was the same kind of time as there was the introduction of things like holograms and lasers, and we were looking at, and at the same time that computers were being brought into society, it was a change, like a proper seismic change in all sorts of things. But the sounds that were different. I remember listening to things like Joy Division, Kraftwerk, um, the sounds you like. What am I listening to? Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
What am I actually listening to? Because I've never heard this sound before. I suppose it'd be similar to. It's going to sound really weird what I'm going to say now, but prior to ever hearing the noise of whale song, society had no understanding of what we whale song we didn't know existed. And then when some dude put a microphone in the sea and recorded whales, we were then like, listen to that sound. That was the same thing when it came to the whole electronic music movement, that
Hmm.
we had not heard that sound prior to that point. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you talk about it so romantically, excuse the pun, that it was obviously a defining moment, a turning point.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was just like,
Let's get into the crux of how that affected you going out. Then eventually, when you'd leave school and
oh,
start
we've
heading
got a
up to
moment
the.
before that. We've got a moment before that. The
Okay.
moment before I left school that was a real life-changing moment was it's difficult for people today that didn't. So now you've got media channels everywhere. You've got Netflix, you've got Amazon Prime. You've got so many different options. Back then, you had three TV channels, and then Channel 4 came along,
Hmm.
and everybody watched those TV channels because that's how it was. That was the only form of media you had. And there was a program called The Tube that went out on a Friday night on Channel 4. And I remember finishing school on a Friday night at 3 o'clock. We all left school, and on that episode of The Tube was Malcolm McLaren being interviewed. and he'd been to New York and he'd met Africa Bambaataa, and he'd Africa Bambaataa had taken him to some like block parties, and he'd come back to the UK and he was like, I found this, and this was the Rocksteady crew, and it was he put together a track called Buffalo Gals, and it was the first time it had ever been broadcast. And on Monday morning at school, everyone was like, for anyone that doesn't understand what Rocksteady Crew
I think
were a
everybody,
big boy.
you've got to realise, without cutting you off, most, and it's beautiful to hear, but most of the people that we're addressing, they will have been with us all along this journey. So
Yeah,
it's not like we're explaining to aliens who aren't aware of it, because everyone's going to be like, yes, I remember it myself specifically. Are you? I've got to ask you, are you 100% sure it was Rocksteady Crew who did Buffalo Girls?
it was Malcolm McLaren. Malcolm McLaren released the single,
Yeah.
and on the video, it was Rocksteady Crew that were breakdancing.
Okay, right. They didn't sing on it though, did they?
I don't know, but I know that they were breakdancing. They were on the
Yeah,
tube. They were
yeah.
breakdancing on the Monday morning. Everyone at school was like, "Did you see that?" And everyone had seen it, and everyone was like, "How were they spinning around? How were they spinning on their back?" We were all talking about how could they possibly do that? Do they have like metal plates that like are spinning around and then must be holding on to the plates? You know, it was a life-changing moment. It really was, and I was like, I want to do that.
I vividly
I
remember as well seeing Jeffrey Daniels do the moonwalk for the first time on Top of the Pops. Same kind of scenario. Same kind of scenario.
yeah, it
And
was just
as well, sorry to cut you off, Boy George, the next day after seeing Boy George on Top of the Pops, the same kind of thing again.
yeah.
It was all you spoke about, as well as the young ones and stuff like that. But let's get back to you. Sorry. So you became a breakdancer?
I did, yes. I had VHS tapes, VHS videotapes of Wild Style, Breakdance Electric Boogaloo, and we used to just watch them over and over and over again. Pause, rewind, slow motion, and watch what they were doing to learn how to do what they were doing. So yeah, became a b-boy, was breakdancing, it was, body popping. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was entertaining people.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it.
I do. Well, let me just stop you there very briefly. I want to address one or two people who are with us live. I did see Steve Reed saying hello earlier. I did. Also, Paulette saying Nottingham Rock City Crew breakdancers were inspired
Yes.
by that.
Yes.
So, hi, Paulette.
all days at the powerhouse, and you'd have the Rock City boys come down. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, fun memories of that. So, okay, the floor. I just wanted to address the people who are watching and say hi. Please feel free to comment. When we
Yeah.
get a break in conversation, I'll always come and address you guys. And if
I,
anything that Dave mentions, then please give us a
I
shout.
honestly think at the time when we were going to things like the Powerhouse All Dayers, we had no idea how important those events were, how influential they were, and the impact that they were going to have on music. For
I
like, I
agree.
remember my mum saying to me when I was in the front room of her house with the VHS tape, rewinding, pausing, trying to learn the breakdance moves. I remember her coming in and saying, "It's just a fad. It'll be gone in 12 months." And that, I was like 16. I'm 55 now, and we know what's happened with hip hop and
Hmm.
the culture of hip hop since then. It was such an amazing time. I don't think we had any idea at the time. Going to see people like Africa Bambaataa, um, Roy Ayers, Herbie Hancock. We had no idea what we were experiencing. All we knew was this is amazing. This is fantastic. Like, people from all over the country would come to Birmingham, go to the powerhouse, and they were there just for that experience, the music, the dancing. It was fantastic.
Hmm.
I
We've
had a
had
great
we've had
time.
so many people on the stream throughout the months that have spoke with such passion and saying about how influential Birmingham was and how it breached the gap for so many different people up and down the country. We got Michael Redmond. I'm not sure if you know Michael at all from being in Newtown area. Ned the Red. He's sending a shout out from Australia. Good morning, my friend. Okay, so breakdancing.
Yeah.
Continue with the story.
Okay, so went from there to life kind of takes over and uh kind of detracted from there. Went into normal life,
Booze,
working.
Sunday nights up the town, up Kaleidoscope, that kind of thing, or no?
No, 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 kind of just got involved with normal life really. And um as you do, you get distracted, you go on with life and you just get on with what you're doing. I was a restaurant manager, I worked in kitchens, I did all sorts of things along those lines. Um, but always music was music is part of you, you know.
Hmm.
It's the first thing that any of us ever experience is rhythm. You know, you're in your mother's womb, you hear your mother's heartbeat. Rhythm is the very first thing you ever experience. Do you
That's
know what I mean?
deep.
So
That's deep.
but it's the reality of it. It
Uh-huh.
is. It's the first thing you ever experience is rhythm. So rhythm is always part of us as human beings. It is. Um, External things may detract from that. Do you know what I mean? So I went on and I did other things, but I always had my interest in music. Um, so I was working in restaurants and kitchens, and I remember going to the Q Club. Someone had
Okay.
said, "Oh, okay, we're going to go to the Q Club." I was like, "Okay, let's go." Um, and the Q Club, this is a strange story. This is Q Club used to be the Central Methodist Church. Do you, do you,
Hmm.
do you know what I'm talking about? Like when
Yeah.
it was Methodist Church. Okay, so I went there as a child to the Christmas Carol service. So I used to go there as a Christmas Carol service when I was about 6 years old. And then years and years later, I went to an event called Bubba Club, not realizing that that is the same place I was going to. Walked through the doors and I was like, oh my God. Bubba Club. I think you may well remember Silver Slipper.
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, I don't actually remember it, if I'm honest, but we've had Jim on
yeah,
telling us
so
about Silver Slipper. I'm fairly
yeah,
certain I would have been there,
yeah,
but I don't remember it.
yeah, because
Before we
Moneypenny's
go
did
on,
it.
let me just say sorry to talk all over you because we've got Justin Bond here. He says good evening.
All right, Justin.
Also, shouts out to Matt. How are you, Fever? How you going, my friend? So yeah, apologies, mate. I don't mean to talk over you, but I wanted to say
No, no,
hi to
that's fine.
Justin.
So I went. You know, when you've kind of got like a you kind of got a removal between certain. So the situation of going as a child to the Methodist Church and the Central Methodist Hall, and then going to this rave. I didn't actually realize when I went into the Q Club to this rave that it was the place I'd been to when I was a kid to the Christmas Carol thing. Um, but the impact of it was just the same. I remember going into Bobber Club at the Q Club, walking in and thinking, "Oh my God, this is just amazing." I think that was about 1994, 93, 94, around that time. It was like a psychedelic trance type night. Um, but I think that the thing with the Q Club, if, for anyone who's been there before, is that it was such a profound building.
Yeah.
The architecture, the acoustics, it was such an amazing building that it had an impact on you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I remember walking in there thinking, I want to do this. I
Right.
want to, I want to do this. From that point on, I went to Space Hopper, Atomic Jam, House of God, um, Third Eyeball, and the production levels that they put in place were just incredible. It gave you, you weren't just so prior to that, sorry, I'm just to rewind a bit. Prior to the Q Club and those kind of events, you had discotheques.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, we were talking earlier about breakdancing and whatnot. I remember going to on John Bright Street. There was a club called Boogies.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm Boogie Dave, but this is before I was Boogie Dave. There was a club called Boogies, and I remember walking into Boogies, going upstairs, and I remember breakdancing on the dance floor at Boogies, and the DJ stopped the music, got on the microphone, and said, "Get off the dance floor. We don't want that stuff in here." you know, we went from that to the Q Club.
Mm-hmm. But what about the
That,
rave scene in between? Because there's, you're talking about the fields, you're talking about the travelers' rave, you're talking about.
but like I said, life interjects, doesn't it?
Right. Okay.
Life,
Okay. So there was the
life
there
can
was the
put
big gap.
breaks. Life can put a break on what you are and what you're doing, and so it went from that to. I remember working at the coach station. I was manager of the restaurant in the coach station when they had the rave in the wholesale market, was it?
In the boring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And but my life had taken me in the direction of you're
I
going to be normal
understand.
now, mate.
Hmm.
You're going to go and have a
Normal.
job. And I remember working that morning after the rave had finished and all of the rave casualties were coming in, gonna have a coffee. It was,
Brilliant.
and I remember thinking about it and thinking, I wish I was them. I wish I
Mm.
was with them and not here in this side of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I
But
totally
life's
relate to
like that,
that.
isn't it? Life takes you on different directions, and
It does for a reason, obviously. So let's skip back forward then to you having the revelation inside the very grandeur building. It's
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
much like well, it was a church. You just said that,
yeah.
and saying, "Okay, I'm ready. Uh, Tell us."
I don't think I ever thought to myself, I'm ready. I remember thinking, this is what I want to do. I
Right.
remember because specifically, I I can recount a thought process. I was living in Erdington. I was on a bus going under the Spaghetti Junction, and at that point, I'd just set up my first ever rave, which was going to take place at the Institute. And I remember sitting downstairs at the back of the bus and convincing myself, because we all have self doubt. We all deny our own abilities. We do all the time. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're chatting shit, because
I
we
think that's a
doubt
very Birmingham
ourselves.
phrase. Chatting shit. I love it.
And I remember sitting on that bus and thinking to myself and having to continually say to myself, this is your time. This is your time. This is your time. This is your time. Don't, don't be scared. Don't stop yourself. Do you know what I mean? I
Hmm.
had to keep repeating that mantra to myself because we have that fear. So I never ever thought that, I was right for this. That I was like, I want to do this. And I had to convince myself, just do it, just do it, just go for it. Doesn't matter if you fail. It really doesn't matter. If you get it wrong and it doesn't, which I've done multiple times, I must add, I have. I've made so many mistakes. I've fallen over so many times. But as I say to so many people, when you're a baby and you are trying to learn to walk, you fall over 1,000 times or more. And
Hmm.
every time you fall over, you get up and you try again. So just remember that indomitable spirit is in you.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Because it's in you. Because if it wasn't, you'd still be crawling around on your hands and knees.
I
That
agree.
was my philosophy.
I agree. So tell us then. Tell us about the event.
So this is a major fall down. So I was on that bus and I was going into the city centre, and I remember looking over at the institute, and there's all these workmen boarding up the windows. I was like, oh, okay. So I phoned the manager that we did it with. He was like, yeah, the council, the owners hadn't paid any bills. The council had repossessed the building. All the money you put into that event is gone. And yeah, that was my first experience in promoting.
Wow.
Uh,
So the event
but
never
like I
actually
say,
never came to fruition then.
no, just lost all the money. But I also thought, as I just said, if you give up now, why did you start in the first place? You've got to keep going, fall down, get up, fall down, get up, fall down, and just keep going. So that's what I've done. Um, and I've done all sorts of things, are like small bars with like 30, 40 people of a Friday night every week. And I've enjoyed all of it at the same level because it's all about giving people an experience that they enjoy.
Hmm.
And
So
that's,
you're going to have to forgive my ignorance. Were you putting the records on, or were you promoter and other people were playing?
I've done both. So I've done events which were band led events. So
Okay.
I'd do events where there'd be like three or four um, indie music bands, and there'd be a couple of tunes playing. It played in between bands. So I was doing that kind of thing. And then I remember being sat in, I got a job at Cafe des Artistes at the custard factory. And I remember sitting in there with Justin Bond. And Justin was like, oh, you do events, you do like band stuff, you do this, that, and the other. And I was like, yeah, yeah, we're having a drink. You know, it's like you get hammered and then shit just happens. And he said, me and my dad, we've got this club. Do you fancy doing something? And I remember him saying to me, this was saying Cafe des Artistes. I remember him saying to me, it's next week. And I was like, okay, Friday next week. And he was like, yeah, yeah, be fine, be fine. It's like, okay, so we've got about 10 days. And he was like, yeah, there's like, okay. And we were sitting there in Cafe des Artistes and we were like, he was saying it's going to be like breaks, it's going to be big beats, it's going to be hip hop. And I remember saying to him that one of the favorite tunes I had when I was a B-boy, when I say when I was a B-boy, I don't think I've ever stopped being a B-boy. It's just, do you know what I mean?
Well, tell yourself that when you try and get down and do
Like, no, I
a
don't. I
whip.
don't because I'm far too old. I can't do it anymore. But back then, one of my favorite tunes was "Boogie Down Bronx" by Man Parish,
Mhm.
and I remember saying to him, the conversation just went around "Boogie Down Bronx," Man Parish, "Boogie Down Bronx." What about "Boogie Down Brum"? And that conversation, it just was like, that's the name. That's the name. That's
Well,
the name of the event.
Justin has just gave us the name of the bar you were talking about, the Carp DM
Oh,
bar.
Carpe Diem. Carpe
Carpe
Diem was
DM.
opposite Birmingham Magistrates Court. No, that was Quo Vadis. Carpe Diem was uh, Great Charles Street.
Okay.
Basically, the
And the,
company that owned Carpe Diem and Quo Vadis, they were one of these corporate
mhm.
organizations. They wanted to. We were doing events at Carpe Diem. that were band-led events. They kicked us out. We went to Quo Vadis, did a few events there, and it was after that that Justin had said, "You do these events. Would you be interested in doing stuff with us at the club?" And I'm like, "Okay, let's do it."
Okay. And he says he was spinning Boogie Down Bronx at the time, and that made you say, "How about this?"
I don't know.
Well, there you go. We all have different spins on how our memories work. Right. I'm reading all your comments, Justin, but I'm going to focus on what Dave's got to say. So forgive me if I don't reference to it all the time. So carry on.
So Justin had said about this event, which was supposed to be a one-off party. Like, yeah, do you want to do this thing next week? Okay, yes, let's do this thing next week. We'll call it Boogie Down Brum as an homage to Boogie Down Bronx, because Brum obviously is the best place in the world. Yeah. And
hallelujah.
So we went and got these like cardboard invitations. They weren't flyers. We went and printed these cardboard invitations, and just literally in the next 7 days went out and distributed them everywhere. We were supposed to do this one-off party on a Friday night. Got to the following Friday, there was this huge queue down the road, and Justin was like, "I think we're onto something here." So that was the birth of Boogie Down Brum. From something that was supposed to be just a one-off event, it went on for months and months and months. After that first event, Justin was like, "Should we do it again?" And he turned the music off and shouted out to everyone, "We're going to do this again next week." And that went on and on and on and on and on. And that's how I got the name Boogie Dave, was because after Boogie Down Brum came to an end, I'd be on the phone to people and I'd say, "Hello, it's Dave." And obviously there's millions of Daves. And then they'd say, "Who's Dave?" "Dave who?" "Boogie Down Brum Dave." So it became, I am Boogie Down Brum Dave, which then became Boogie Down Dave, which then became Boogie Dave.
Not to be confused.
I cannot escape. I cannot escape that
that's
name.
Okay. We've got.
I don't want to. I'm just saying that's what happened.
I know Disco Daves. I know Dodgy Daves. I know Dave, the disco dancing hairdresser. But you are Boogie Dave, the one and only. Okay. So do continue.
So Boogie Down Brum was just an amazing experience. It really was. For something that was not really planned to go any longer than one event, it was an experience. The people that came to it were amazing. The DJs that came and played were amazing. Justin knew loads of people, loads of DJs that he would invite, and they'd come down and play. I'd been working at Café des Artistes. Across the road from Café des Artistes at the Cush Factory was Medicine Bar, which had just kind of started off. And you had Adam Regan and Simon Jones and so many people. It was the same era as New Tonic and Wobble. You know, it was just a unique time period. There was so much going on at that point in time, and everybody seemed to connect with everyone else. Although, as you said earlier, you and I had never hooked up, and me and Silong had never hooked up, even though we were all moving in those circles at that time. It's quite bizarre that we never actually met.
Well, our musical genres, so to speak, by that time, I was so thoroughly immersed in doing what I was doing on the house scene, and then moving into the American soulful house scene, eventually into the UK garage and so on. So I was very much focused on that. I've always had an eclectic music taste, but for the major part of the 90s, everything for me was just all about house music. So I would have never gone to one of your events on the Friday or any of your events anywhere,
So is that
unfortunately.
because you didn't feel the whole big beat break
No, it
scene?
was just that I had residencies in Birmingham. I
Yeah.
can't even reel them off now, whenever it was. Um, I would never have made a conscious decision not to go somewhere. It was just that we had our own scene that we were
Yeah.
developing, and we were, really proud of. I was traveling up and down the country. So, no, nothing as sinister as basically I was just too busy to do anything other than what I was doing myself at the time, as well as working on the radio.
You missed some really good parties.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
I
Legendary
suppose I missed some
parties.
as well.
Oh, definitely. That's a conversation over a couple of beers one time.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, so continue with the timeline then of after Boogie Down Brum.
Okay,
Sorry.
so that, oh God, there's so much that went on with that, but the, we can't go into every detail, every aspect of what went on. So after that, I I was working with some friends. We were doing an event called Tumble Down.
Okay.
I don't know if you know, there was a tiny little bar called Sputnik in the city centre, just by Pigeon Park.
No.
So Sputnik was this tiny little, tiny bar. You could get about 40 people in there, but it was down some stairs, and you had to go down these stairs to get into it. And because most people, when they walked down the stairs, were pissed before they got there, and they were falling down the stairs, we called the event Tumble Down. So we were doing
Okay.
this event called Tumble Down. I was playing records down there, and a friend of ours, his mum was the chair of National C&D, Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, and this was leading up to the invasion of Iraq. And we just got into this like mad conversation. We played different places. We were at Sputnik, then Quo Vadis, and then Bar Academy next to the academy. And I remember being sitting in Bar Academy talking about the invasion of Iraq, and Ian, whose mum was the chair of C&D, talking about the fact that they wanted to kind of relate to the younger generation and try and do something. And we were like, we need to do something to protest about the invasion of Iraq. Let's do a protest event. So we agreed, went and spoke to the management at the institute. They allowed us to have the venue for free. We spoke to all sorts of DJs that had come and performed at Boogie Dave Brum, at Tumbledown, at Bar Academy, and we were like, we're going to do this. Bearing in mind, we'd been doing these events on a Friday night for maybe 50, 60, 70 people. So that was our precursor to Drop Beats Not Bombs. Drop Beats Not Bombs, the very first event, we thought maybe 400 people would come. We opened the door, 2,500 people stood outside because those people related to what we were trying to say,
Right.
you know,
So would you
music,
say you were the first people
politics.
to coin the phrase "drop beats, not bombs"?
Say again?
Would you say you were the first people to coin the phrase "drop beats, not bombs"? Can you lay claim to that honestly?
I'll tell you exactly what happened. We went on the Don't Attack Iraq march in London, and we were on that march, and we walked down. There was like 2.5 million people there. It was just the most incredible experience to go on, and it was just, and there were placards everywhere, and we turned around and we saw a placard that said "Drop Beats, Not Bombs." And at that point, we'd already got the event organized, and the event was called CND Free All Nighter Party. And I
Right.
remember turning around, talking to the guys I was with, and said, "Look at that. We need to use that logo." And we put it on the flyer, Drop Beats Not Bombs, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And it became those four words. And that event that was supposed to be just one protest event went on for 10 years.
So when
And
did
drop
that?
beats
Forgive me, I should know world history. Remind me of the year that would have been.
2003.
Okay,
So 19 years ago.
right.
Honestly, saying 19 years ago, like, wow, it just doesn't seem like
hmm And that we did
19
say
years.
earlier when we were preparing to do the conversation, that was the year that I relocated to Spain. So obviously, through your glory days, those 10 years, there's no reason why I would have ever been around to have
Yeah,
witnessed those.
yeah,
So tell us about some of those parties and some of the ethics. Began with a great positive message, and from it came some incredible parties. Did it take you
yeah. I
national?
mean, say again.
Did it take you national?
So, drop beats not bombs became a movement. It was
Okay.
never, it was, so the first event was completely free. The event after that was £1, which was 6 months later. The event after that was £2. So it was never, ever about money. It was never about profit. It was always about those four words: drop beats, not bombs. It was about positioning that anti-war message in the subconscious minds of everyone that attended. So we took the same approach as people like Bacardi and Smirnoff, who around the same time they were doing, there was Smirnoff Live, no, Bacardi B Live and Smirnoff Experience.
Yeah.
So they, as brands, were putting on huge events, putting loads of money into those events because they wanted to position their brand in the subconscious of the people that were going to those events, because they knew that the people that were there at that moment would be at their most susceptible. We took the same approach, but instead of a brand of a product, the message was drop beats not bombs. And we would bring VJ crews from all across the country, multiple VJ crews. We would have 10, 12 different stages of music. We proper pushed the boundaries of what could happen in Digbeth. We really did. And, reflecting on it all, it's like, there's no way anyone would be able to do today what we did then. It changed Digbeth because of what we did, you know?
hmm
It
And was
was
it still called the Institute?
The Institute now is the Institute. Yeah, but the Institute, we only did the first two events at the Institute.
Okay.
After that, we moved to the Custard Factory. So we closed off, we would put stages in the pool, the medicine bar, the kitchen, the theatre. We'd close off the road outside and put a stage out there. We'd go down to behind the Custard Factory and put a stage. We honestly, we changed
Full
what you
blown
could do.
festival mode.
Yeah, it was.
hmm
I'm not going to say we pushed the boundaries of the legality of what we could do. I think we didn't realize what we could or couldn't do. We never, times were different then. I think if you tried to do it now, you'd have all sorts of crap to deal with.
hmm
But back then, we just did it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We didn't get permission to do it. We just did it.
Trailblazers. Trailblazers indeed.
But it was all about those four words. It was
hmm
all about, we did all sorts of crazy stuff. Like we got like 15, 20 of us dressed in nuclear biological warfare suits with gas masks and went into town handing out flyers, and people were like, what the hell? Do you know what I mean? We did things that you would never see these days. We
hmm
did all sorts of crazy shit.
Sounds brilliant.
It's good times.
You talk about it with such passion as well. You remember it, and you remember it also clearly as well, which is incredible. So 10 years, throughout those 10 years, taking us up to, obviously we went through hardship, we went through global currency crisis, we went through war, as you know, the global crash, the economy
Yeah.
grinding to a halt, the music scene going through lots of its own traumas, the landscape of the music scene changing, um, the way that people consume music with the streaming and everything like that. So you would have seen a lot of changes throughout those 10 years.
Yeah. yeah. There's been. I was with some friends earlier, and we were talking about like some of the profound differences that have taken place, like physical flyering.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm sure you'll remember when you would come out of a club and there would be 10, 15, 20 people stood there giving you physical flyers, and you would just enjoy receiving those flyers, and you'd
Hmm.
go home and you'd have those. Oh, the one lad I was talking to, and I was explaining to him, yeah, you'd see like promoters would do things like they'd have perforated flyers.
Yeah, for the roaches.
There you go, there you go. But he was like, "What? You do what?" You know, because it was part of our culture back then. It
Hmm.
was our experience. Now everything is social media. It's I personally, after the conversation we've had today, I think there may well be a resurgence in that kind of physical approach to interacting with people. Um, yeah, there's been so many changes in the way people experience music, the whole MP3
Hmm. It
evolution,
stopped being so physical, and did go to be very virtual. Emily, who's been watching, hi Emily, she says she misses the flyers. Um,
flyers, going to
okay, so
record shops,
let's
going
not
to
get.
record
Actually,
shops. I
you
mean,
mentioned about
you've got
record
loads of vinyl
shops.
behind you.
Yeah.
You know, kids today who are mega DJs, they won't have that behind them when they're doing an interview in 15, 20 years.
They won't. But let's not worry about that. Let's not try and break down society too much and analyze it all. Let's just focus on your journey. So I said
Okay.
hi to Emily. Um, Tell us the next important step then that you feel.
So basically goes back to flyering.
Okay.
So I would go out in town flyering, Birmingham City Centre, go to every venue, every bar, handing out flyers. I'd then go from there down to the custard factory to hand out flyers. As I would do that, I'd walk past the venue that I now have, which is called Suki10c. It was an old boozer called the Spotted Dog. And I would walk past it every night, and it had a big to let sign on the outside. I'd walk past it and think to myself, I'd love to have that. I'd love to take that on as a little venue, just I know loads of graffiti artists. I know loads of DJs. I know loads of people who would actually come and support what I do. And I think I must have spent about 3 years, 3 years walking past, thinking the same thought process. Oh, look, the to let sign, it's still there. And go down to the custard factory, carry on partying, flyering, doing whatever. And then one day I thought to myself, phone the number, just phone them. So I did. I phoned and I said, I'd like to have a look at that venue, please. Well, that property, because it wasn't a venue. It was a pub, a backstreet boozer that had been shut for 4 or 5 years. It was not a venue. And I was like, I'm convinced I can make that into something unique, a nice little venue. And arranged a meeting, came down, met the agent, came into the building, thought, holy shit, this is a mess. Um, and actually said to the agent at the time, it's too much for me, because scrap thieves had broken in and
Okay.
ripped the place apart to get all the copper and the wire, copper piping, wire. It was an absolute bomb site. And literally, as I was about to walk away from him, he said to me that there was an insurance payout because of it having been broken into. Insurance had paid us a lump sum to repair the damage, and they decided that they were not going to do anything until somebody took on the building and they could release that lump sum to the person that took on the lease. At that point, I thought that makes it different, because I literally had no money.
Right.
I was prepared to bring friends in to paint it if it was, if the structure was okay, but the amount of work that was required to put it together. And when he said that, I went home and I thought that could work. I might be able to do that. So I phoned and I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's go for it. The amount of the insurance was £20,000. It actually cost
I,
forty-five
I was going to
thousand
say that
pounds.
sounds like a drop in the ocean.
But you know,
And it
I'm one of
costs.
these people.
Just repeat what it costs.
£45,000. Get it done. So I got a loan for the remainder and just did it. I was like, you know, when it's one of those situations where you know, you either stay in the airplane or you jump, and that parachute is either going to work or it's not, but you've jumped,
Mhm. Fair
and
play.
that's what it is.
Well, we were talking earlier, and I said, because I've only ever read it, and I said, so yeah, we'll talk about the venue, Suki 10. And
Yeah.
you stopped me in your chat. I said, "Can I just stop you there? Can Because I've never been to the venue. As I say, it's a part of a scene that I'm not really aware of. So tell us exactly what the venue is called and how it all came about."
Okay. So I've I've been forever involved in putting events on and plays on words. I just love it. I just love the geometry of letters and how you can make things sound different. So basically, a long time ago, I was going to put on an event. I've done loads of events, and I came up with this idea of doing an event with Japanese lettering down the side of the flyer, and I wanted it to say SUKI10C. I remember talking to a friend of mine who was a designer, and I said to him, "Could you give me a logo based on what I've just said to you? SUKI10C." And he was like, "Yeah, I can do that." So he put it all together. That event never happened, but that concept stayed in my head because the play on words was SUKI10C. For a Brummie, what you're saying is suck it and see.
That's a stretch because I never seen that.
But that is, and the amount of people that talk about the name of the venue, and they're like, they call it Suki10 or Suki10c. And I'm like, do you realize what you're saying? You're being a Brummie. You're listen to what you're saying. Suck it and see. Do you know what I
Suki 10C.
mean? It's about being a Brummie. Suck it and see. Try something new that you've never experienced before. That was the concept of it. And you know, some people don't like it at all. Some people are like, "What?" You know,
Well, we've
like
got a friend. He says, "Respect from Mr. Mental Genius, aka DJ Dave from Chuff Chuff. Let's talk this week, Mr. Lubin." Also, shouts out to Pax and to the house poet Michael. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, anyone else that's passing through. Okay, so Suki C was born. Suki
suck
10
it and
C.
see.
Suki 10 C was born
Yeah.
in 2000 and.
It was 2012, so we
Okay,
celebrate 10 years this year. We actually opened on the Golden Jubilee,
all right.
so we opened for that 4 day period. And my philosophy has always been that this is because it's 180 capacity. It's about offering people the opportunity to people that want to start in promoting. You know, I've been doing what I do for 30 years. I know what kind of people run venues. I know what kind of people you have to deal with. So this is completely not what people normally have to deal with. You know, new promoters, talk to me, we'll look after you
Mhm,
because this is a venue for promoters run by promoters. Do you know what I mean? It's
mhm.
like I've been there where you've got people like threatening to knock you out if you don't give them X amount of money, and You know, it's you don't need that. You're a young kid. You want it. You're at the very start of your promoting career. You need somewhere that's going to encourage you and going to give you an opportunity to do something where you don't have the stress. You don't need to get 500-600 people in. Here, you can have a party for 50 people, and it will be a great experience. And it's a conduit for new talent, for new promoters, for new artists. That's what we're about. That's
So,
what
have you
this
ever been
place is about.
involved in any of the larger events that have taken on within the Digbeth area over the last few years? You know, Digbeth, you were very apprehensive in laying claim to having much to do with the regeneration, so to speak, of Digbeth. But you know, I think it's fair to say you were instrumental in laying the path that many followed to a much more, I think it's fair to say, a successful on a larger scale. Successful isn't maybe the right word, but on a larger scale. So any of
Yeah,
these large events, have you ever been incorporated with them? Has there been a nice community within Digbeth, or has it been very much every dog for himself?
I think Drop Beats Not Bombs showed people what the potential was. Um, we like where Ghetto Golf is now.
Okay.
That used to be a forklift truck factory. We were the first people to ever use that space as a venue. We used what's now I don't know if it's a cinema anymore. Um, in the Custard Factory, there was a cinema space. We used that. We've used so many spaces that were never ever utilized as event spaces as part of Drop Beats Not Bombs,
Hmm.
but not for any financial gain. It was for the experience, and I think it gave other people an inkling into what you could actually do in Digbeth to give people experiences. You know,
Hmm.
a guy called Kent Davis used to have Rooty Fruity. He saw what we were trying to do, and when he took on the Rainbow with Adam Shelton and oh fucking hell, what's his name?
Them lot.
uh, Lee.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Adam and Lee. Drop Beats Not Bombs showed them what you could potentially do. And I remember walking down Trinity Street, Lower Trinity Street with Kent and saying to him, I want to use that space there. I want to use that space there. I want to use that space there. Those spaces, he then developed into the arena and Mama Roo. And, you know, these are all things that I was like, this is what I want to do. And they've gone on and done it, which is fine. And whatever happened afterwards, we won't go
Hmm.
there.
We've all got those
but
tales.
but where we're at now is we've now had Suki10c for 10 years. After people saying to us, you'll be gone after 6 months because people didn't believe that we were able to do what we were going to do. We're here 10 years later. We celebrate 10 years this year. And we spent the last 12 months developing a new space called T Works. And T Works is going to redefine Digbeth. It's going to give people a completely new view on what Digbeth can be. I'm so excited by where we're going with that. Big
Okay.
open air space
Is this
that's going
working
to
hand in hand with the council?
nothing to do with the council. No,
Really? Because I,
no.
I have seen artist impressions about viaducts and rolling green fields and
The,
parks
the the
and
viaducts, that's part of the whole so basically the people that took over the custard factory are called Oval. So that's a huge development company, developers that are doing. They've just had a planning application approved where they're going to demolish something like 56 buildings in Digbeth.
right.
Um, they're the people that are doing that viaduct. They're the people that have the custard factory. They're going to put a huge, great big residential thing on top of the custard factory, which
Wow.
is, fine. Okay, you carry on, do what you're doing. What I'm doing Is proper Digbeth. Is proper old school Digbeth.
Proper Peaky Blinders.
Yes. This club, for people who don't know, I actually live on the top floor of Suki10c. This building was built in 1786, and it was built as a pub to serve the navvies that were building the canal system in Digbeth. This pub was actually part of the original the real Peaky Blinders. You had the Allison Street gang just up the road. It's proper.
Mm-hmm.
Same as the Rainbow. Rainbow is actually part of the proper history of not the fiction, the actual proper history of it.
Have you ever tried to cash in's a negative word? Take advantage of the notoriety that's brought and had any themed evenings
Of the
or
Peaky Blinders?
yeah.
No, 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 no.
Try to bring in
We're
any
somewhat completely
tours
different.
or
No, no. I mean, we this building is now iconic because of the artwork that's painted on the outside of the building. We've
okay.
always been very much, well, you can see in the picture behind me, future of Birmingham is that mural.
Mm-hmm. Who's the
That
artist
mural,
responsible?
that mural was commissioned by Amo Talwa, who's the head of diversity at UK Music.
We had Damo on
When,
last week.
oh yeah, of course, Amo, yeah. So they commissioned that artwork in 2019 for Black History Month,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like 21 portraits of positive young Black role models. And it's the amount of people that come and park up outside, or they'll walk up, take photographs. It's iconic.
Mm-hmm. So, do you want to tell us any more about the tea rooms, or when is
Tea
that? Or
Works.
sorry, forgive me. The tea works.
So Tea Works is
What's the time scale?
it's already there. Like we spent the last. It's basically when the first lockdown happened. I was pretty convinced that indoor venues were never going to reopen.
Right.
This was prior to any kind of vaccination scheme or it was pretty grim. And we as a venue, we were from the day we were told we have to close until the day we opened was 70 weeks. It was grim. And if it wasn't for, there's an organization called Music Venue Trust. A Music Venue Trust represented about 1,000 grassroots music venues across the country. If it wasn't for them, we would have been bankrupt. No two ways about it. We would have been bankrupt. They guided us and, like I say, 1,000 grassroots music venues throughout the pandemic. They had daily face-to-face meetings with the government, with the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. And when it came to the Cultural Recovery Fund, they showed us how to apply. Honestly, I can't sing their praises enough. They have showed us how to see ourselves, not just as a venue, but as a significant arts and culture organization. There's a massive difference between seeing yourself as a club,
yeah,
and seeing yourself as significant arts and culture organization, which we'd never thought about before.
Does it
We were just
take you back to the days of sitting on the bus going under Spaghetti Junction, thinking,
yeah,
it's a totally
yeah,
different mindset.
yeah. But they showed us the way to apply to Arts Council for funding, and that's how we see our future. Is we are an arts organisation, and the
Dave
stuff that we're going
Carey
to do at Tea
says,
Works.
Dave Carey says, big up Tea Works.
Tea Works, honestly, is going to redefine Digbeth.
Okay, so give me a time scale. Tell me when
we
the
it's like
fanfare.
last year we did a couple of events. This year we've got multiple events already booked in. Beer Central Festival. We're currently in discussions. I shouldn't really say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Red Bull. We're talking about doing the at the same time period as the Commonwealth Games. We're looking at doing the Urban Wealth Games.
Okay.
So like having half pipe and skateboarders and BMXers. We've got multiple event organizers talking to us about putting their own events on over there. Honestly, it's some next level stuff we've got going on over there.
Brush off
It's going to change Digbeth because at the minute custard factory side of Digbeth, it's all well and good. It's been going for donkey's years. Loads of organisations from outside of Birmingham coming in, taking on properties because they see, you've got the Guardian talking about one of the coolest places in the UK is Digbeth. But how many Brummies are doing stuff in Digbeth? Not that many. I'm one of them.
Right.
And
Bring
I'm
the
going to change
grassroots
Digbeth.
back. Bring the grassroots back. I was just saying, dust off the shell suit then, ready for the Urban Wealth Games. Well, I've been sitting, enjoying, hearing your story. I feel like we've raced through it actually. We've had people commenting, enjoying. If anyone has any questions or anything they want to say, Michael Grierson from down south is saying flying the flag. So that's someone from London listening intently to the tales that we've got to tell about Birmingham. Because everyone that comes on, even though the way that the dates have fallen, because I have struggled to coordinate people when I needed them to be on. So it has given us quite a few Brummers Fucks together where I'd like to spread them a little further apart. But it is definitely interesting. Birmingham, as we've covered many times, it's been so very influential in so many different movements, the careers of major DJs, the development of major brands that have gone on to become global. Birmingham is responsible for a lot of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the main objectives of what I do is to give new people from Brum the opportunity to go and do exactly what you just said. Because so many people in so many venues, so many organizations, all they're interested in is the successful people.
Yeah.
And what we're interested in is the people who are going to be successful.
Has it all been fun and games? Have you had any people come and try it and fallen flat on their face, so to speak? Has it all been plain sailing?
I've fallen flat on myself. I flat on my face myself. I don't have any problem with people trying and falling flat on their face. I don't have a problem with that because shit happens, and people try their very best and it doesn't work. Okay, it doesn't work. Doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It is what it is. I don't have a problem with that.
Learn from it, tweak it, come
Yeah,
again.
exactly. Learn from it. Yeah.
John Harris says, great as ever to see your enthusiasm, Dave. I'll see you at the Q Club launch or the Q launch. That's one thing
the Q Club launch, the not Q Club launch, the in the Q Club.
Yeah, that's my tongue slip. You forgive me. What is the Q launch?
In the Q Club is okay. So basically,
okay, no, I'm reading it. See you at in the Q launch.
Yes.
Forgive me. Is this the photo exhibition?
It's more than just a photo exhibition. The Q Club was historic in the same way that we discussed earlier, the powerhouse and how influential it was, but we didn't realize at the time that it was as important as it was. The Q Club was exactly that. People went and had the most amazing raves of their lives ever, but none of us realized just how important it was. People like Surgeon, Surgeon came from the Q Club. Flashback,
House of God you mentioned earlier.
Just Atomic Jam, House of God, Third Eye, Space Opera. The events that happened there were phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, and the impact that had on other people is I don't think we can measure.
No. But the thing is, we have these conversations, and I watch a lot of and listen to a lot of conversations of people recounting history, and it is very easy to romanticize and piece together things that we think we remember at the time, or we piece together slightly differently than that it happened. Because myself, for example, you mentioned the likes of Flashback. Let's pull a name out of thin air.
Yeah.
I used to DJ with Mo at Marco Polo's at. We used to do a thing called Bubble on a Friday night. And Mystery Smo used to play there, and they used to do Flashback at this tiny little party. I think they might have even done a couple at Wobble. I'm not sure. I'm sure people will correct me. And then they used to do it in a tiny little place, and then it got really big. House of God started off quite small, but that
They
was
all started off at Birmingham University.
they were in that tiny little
Yeah.
is it next
Because
to
there
the
were
triangle
students.
rooms?
There were students with a passion for their music. There were students with a passion for what they believed in. And
But the funny thing is, I don't think Mystery Smo was a student. She used to put the parties on.
She was at Birmingham University, and then they opened up Old School Days in Selly Oak.
Right.
Do you remember Old School Days?
The record shop on the main road.
Yeah, that sold tickets, that
Yeah,
sold
yeah.
headgear, that sold records. You go in there. It was a proper community. Event
Very much
organisers,
a completely different
promoters.
scene to mine. I only used to go in there to try and flog a few CDs, allegedly.
I used to go in there. I'd take books of tickets, give them to Mo. They would sell tickets. You'd put posters up. You put flyers in there. It was the same as like that's what I'm saying about the way record shops and how it all like kind of dissipated away. That's what it used to be. You'd go into these places. You'd take your posters. You take your there was no Skiddle, there was no online tickets. People that were coming to your events, they'd have to go into those shops to buy the physical ticket,
and then you'd go in to collect your book of stubs to see how many you'd sold.
Book of stubs, yeah. And you'd but it was that community of like you'd be stood outside a nightclub handing out flyers at the end of the night, and the other promoters would all be stood there next to you also handing out the flyers, and you'd see
until the flyer packs came out.
Yeah.
Great memories.
Until Facebook.
So, listen, I've said it to all of the guests that we have on. Really, really insightful, really interesting to hear the different stories. And as time progresses, I will mix and match and bring everybody else. Because once we've got the facts out of the way, we've got the timeline down, so to speak, of individual stories, then we could have 4 people out in a panel. It'd be difficult not to all talk over one another, but everyone would still be able to bounce off each other and have different stories to tell because so many different memories are evoked. Like I'm reading a lot of comments from Justin this evening, and he's talking about they had stickers on every bus going around Brum and so many stories.
My God, yeah. Oh my God, the Boogie Down Brum stickers and the Drop Beats Not Bomb stickers, and we would walk down the street and we would stick them onto buses. Like,
did you ever get a cease and desist from the old Bill?
No, because they got to prove you put the sticker on.
Yeah.
It's history. And I really appreciate the fact that you are doing these interviews because this kind of knowledge, if you weren't doing this, it would be gone. It would be lost. And it's important. I mean, in like 200-300 years time, this will be a record of what happened here. We'll all be gone, but there'll be historians going, "Whoa, look at this interview," and they will. And it's important that they see exactly what was going on. It was a fundamental shift in society, and people changed the way they viewed each other. People talk about the football hooligans and how ecstasy changed, and it's like, okay, that's fine for you to just say it. What we're talking about is the actual fundamental change in society and how we all interacted with each other. You know what I mean?
Totally. You can't reminisce and not be moved romantically by it, get goosebumps thinking about those times. It's not something you can get from text in a book. So thank you for the kind words. We will continue these conversations, and I'm trying my best to expand the horizons of people who I'm talking to. So thank you for being here, Dave. I truly appreciate it. No problem at all. And I'll let you know. We'll get back on and we'll do some more talks. Thank you, brother.
Cool. All right. Take care.
Respect. Take care, my man. Right, I'm going to
Do
see
that.
if
Yeah,
this
there you go.
works now. Peace. Yes, did it work? Am I still here? I am still here. Oh, right. So Dave has gone, but he will be picking up the recording. So there's supposed to be something in that little box there telling me what's happening next week. Why isn't it working? Everything's decided to pack up. People are commenting. Paulette, brilliant interview. Thank you for being here, Paulette. Start to finish. Be-bye for life, indeed, even if he can't spin on his head anymore. And Emily also enjoying it. Thank you, everybody. I get to the end of these conversations because I've been talking for so long. I'm always conscious of wanting to wrap it up quickly, but I'm not going to this evening. Give me a couple of minutes of your time. I'm just going to send thanks to all of you guys for being here. On the screen, I've changed the outro screen now. There should be some more little notifications of people who have liked the video, people who have shared the video. The reasons why I do this is because it's very difficult. I've got thousands of people in my network, and people who've been watching me for the last 12 months will understand where I'm coming from. Every week, I try my best to get the word out to people, get more people joining us live. It doesn't really make any difference to me if we've got 3 people watching or we've got 300 people watching, but it does change the dynamics of the conversation if you guys are having communications in between yourselves, and the people I'm interviewing also can come back and read your comments and whatever. So if ever you are watching one of the videos and you enjoy it, please like it for me. Please share it, because it's all about these nonsense algorithms. It lets Facebook's robots know that, oh, people are liking this video. I'll put it into more people's timelines. It's as simple as that. So all of your comments, all of your shares, all of your likes, they really are appreciated. You can see on the screen here a little graphic that says that Access Crew with a few logos coming up of people who support me on a monthly basis. Thank you very much. Justin is saying he can't see anyone else's posts, just mine. So he says hi. The reason for that is, Justin, I'm streaming to my own personal profile, and I'm also streaming onto the Facebook page as well. I was streaming to YouTube, but I cut it off because we get these stupid bots leaving random comments. So it's really difficult to get everyone to communicate, but that's why I put the comments up on the screen. So you should be able to read the comments on the screen as people leave them. Schoolie's been here saying proper things. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Not too long, hopefully, before you get on there. And a thumbs up from Justin. So that's it. Next week, there was meant to be... I'm such a twat. There you go. I hadn't had it activated. It's actually this week. It's going to be 12 months since I began this channel, Inspire and Be Inspired. The whole reason why I wanted to do it was share my experiences of the difficulties of trying to be noticed on Facebook, to try and be noticed when you're trying to share your mixes on Mixcloud, when you're trying to get noticed on YouTube, so on and so forth. Everyone who knows me knows that on paper, I've got a lot of friends in my social network. I have a lot of reach with the accolades that I've achieved. And yet I still struggle to get into people's line of sight because I just continue to do it because I love doing it. It doesn't bother me, but I can understand how it can grind people down. And that was the whole reason why I started off the channel, Inspire and Be Inspired, to let people know, keep pushing. I wanted to share tips and tricks on little workarounds. And here I am 12 months later, and I'm still none the wiser. But what I am is richer from the conversations that I've had over the last 12 months. And 2 of the gentlemen who are responsible for inspiring me on my journey are Lenny Fontana and Mr. Mark Wilkinson. Lenny's True House stories have been simply just breathtaking. The people that he's spoken to, the stories that they've shared It's been nothing short of inspiring for myself. Tales that we've known and heard time and time again, but not like this. And Lenny's going to let us know next week some of his high moments, some of his favourite interviews, and what it's helped him to achieve. And Mark Wilkinson, a life coach, former DJ, now a world acclaimed author. He's going to also explain his journey over the last 12 months since releasing his book, and why his life has changed for the better because of streaming. And so that's going to be a really important chat next week, celebrating all of our anniversaries. So please be here at 7 o'clock. I always get a lot more people watching the recordings than I do have live, so I'm always conscious of saying to everybody, please do leave a comment, please do leave a like, and let me know you're with me. Really do appreciate it. Michael says it's been a great help and very inspiring, so thank you for doing these. Thank you for saying so. Andrew Marriott just caught the last end. Big up yourself, bro. Go back and check it out. Stories of Birmingham. You know, I've been trying to get you on, my mate, when we were doing the Soulful House Mafia conversations. I actually dropped the Soulful House conversations because it was getting harder and harder to get people to commit to dates. And in the end, I was like, let me talk about Birmingham. Anyway, my absolutely useless patois will bring us to the end of this evening's conversation. Thank you for being here, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your night. And what's going on? I look like a homeless person, very unkempt. I'm doing my best to get my hair as long as possible so I get that nice sharp cut ready for Southport. I'll be looking even worse next Tuesday. I just thought I'd make you aware of that. So if for no other reason, come back and see how scruffy I look next week. See you later. Love you lots.